Yeah, I'm going to tape this today. All right, so let's get this thing going. So we go to classwork, right, for MDM values 3, 4, and I want you to go to Renaissance time assignment for Monday, okay? So open that up, and you'll see your Renaissance notes. And they look a little something like this. You can see I just kind of have bullet points there. And you can make the spaces in between, but you're going to just write down some things, hit the highlights that you think are important to have written down. Okay? So we'll try to do the best we can with that. So just write down some information that you get. It doesn't have to be word for word for my slide. I just want you to understand what's going on, why these are included. I'm trying to hit the highlights of what I think is important at this time. So open that up. And I will get started. And again, I'm using a PowerPoint as you do. Got this recorded. We're okay with that. Put this note over here. Stop me if I go too fast. All right. And I'll put the PowerPoint up there later. Questions, anybody? All righty then. Yes. Pardon me? Yes. So if you need to move, I don't know, Gray, you might want to move so you can see something. Anyone can move. Ms. Marker, Mr. Moss, do you see this on your screen? Okay, perfect. Yeah, so I just told you to open up the Renaissance notes, right? Does everyone have that? It's on Google Classroom? Huh? Anyone not know what we're taking notes with? So if you go to your iPad, Gray, you'll see Renaissance with an exclamation point, okay? All right, and we'll start again. And I'll wait for you to get that open. All right, so the Renaissance as compared to the Middle Ages, right? So I have what a time to be alive, because I think it's a little bit better, but that's just me, I'm biased. Okay. Renaissance. Yeah, there should be something in a document in Google Classroom.
Wait, so we're like imagining that we're alive?
I'm just joking around with the description.
Would you have wanted to live during this time?
Oh, no.
No.
Okay, so that's just a little me having a conversation with you, okay? All right, let's move it along here. So Renaissance means rebirth in French. Renaissance. Naissance is, I think, to be born, and re in front of something means to do it again. So Renaissance means rebirth. And this we're saying, so long goodbye to the Middle Ages. Remember that millennium of time, long period of time. Okay, and people are like, yeah, we survived the bubonic plague. Those that survive are pretty darn happy, right? Not as extreme as, let's say, COVID. I don't know numbers or anything like that. But the idea too that with this, with COVID, right, some of us might have a different appreciation for things too. Hopefully that's kind of changed our mindset and figure out what's important to us. And there's a lot of happiness, people surviving the bubonic plague. They're really happy that they're alive. And because of this, they have this new appreciation for life and a new worldview and the spirit of adventure. Okay. Yeah. So you got that it means rebirth, right? Okay. So the Italian Renaissance, and this is about 1500s CE, I think on this little slide that we have here. The Italian Renaissance came first, okay? And why did it come first? And here's a little map you can see over here. Well, maybe it's helpful for me to point on this for people there. There's the old boot, okay? And cities are growing. Remember in the Middle Ages, people kind of went with a step back. Those Germanic invaders came in and they brought their traditions and their culture. And people moved out of the cities and had those manners, right? The land and the serfs and that whole feudal pyramid. Now, though, little by little, cities are starting to grow and trade is growing. People are moving back to the cities and businesses are back up and booming. It's kind of a comeback. Okay, why Italy first? Because they recovered from the bubonic plague first. Also, if you notice the nice thing about Italy, it's surrounded by water. Again, we go back to that geographic luck, making it easier for trade, okay, to send goods out, to get goods in, okay? And Italy had these thriving cities that had a big comeback. They also had a wealthy merchant class and that classic heritage of ancient Greece and Rome, okay? So that fermentation, if you want, to that, this interest in the arts and back to a more classical time was still kind of there in that spirit of Italy. Yeah.
What date were the Italian Renaissance?
Do I have the dates on here? I should know the dates. That would be a good thing for me to know. And I don't know why I don't have them on here, so let's skip that one. But you've got about, let's say 1500. It's kind of 14 to 16, let's say.
I'm
gonna look it up.
Starts. It started 720, around 720. No, not that. So I remember.
Well, here there's a 1500 over here, but it is like 15, 1600.
Yep, exactly. For about 200 years.
Yeah. All right. And you've got that widely first, right? And here's we got some Renaissance art there. You got the sculpture and this painting. Okay, and with that, we get this idea of humanism, okay? And humanism is an intellectual movement, kind of like a philosophy too, that focuses on human potential and achievements. This is a big idea. What?
All I see is I see middle age.
Okay, Liam, can you just focus on this right now though? You mean you can't find the document for this?
Oh, I
You got it?
yeah, I got it.
Okay. All right, is everybody else on the note-taking device that we've got? Is there a problem with that? Okay, so again, back to this idea of humanism, this celebration of human potential, what makes people human, right? And this is a big idea during the Renaissance and a big departure from the Middle Ages, right? Remember the Middle Ages, it's like, I've got to be a serf, I've got to be a peasant because God put me in this position and this is where I stay. I have to. And humanists say, no, 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 no. You can enjoy life without offending God. You can celebrate things without offending God. God made us human and we should celebrate that. And again, all of this is Renaissance art here too. Okay, you've got God giving life to Adam over there. Yes, that's the top of the Sistine Chapel. Yep. So there you've got God.
Is that like a giant painting too?
Yes, on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. So he was up there, and we'll go into that in detail too. So on top of these arts, on his back on a scaffold, painting these things. Huge, huge, huge. This is a small little snippet of it.
You could really call it the Michelangelo movement. because he was
And,
such a big
and
part of
again,
it.
though, and we're going to look at the art stuff later, but remember the stiff, I don't know if you were here, and I thought you guys were here on the Zoom, the stiff picture of Mary and Jesus, right? And Mary looked like she was in pain, and baby Jesus looked like a 45-year-old man, okay? Look here, Adam's pretty ripped, okay? You're going to see the celebration of the body and this artwork. And again, muscles, skeleton, the idea is to make them look lifelike, to make them look like actual people, living, breathing people. Okay, so this idea of humanism came about. And again, it's this departure. The reason why I talked about the Middle Ages and the Renaissance is they're two very different things and how kind of life and culture changes. Okay, so in the Middle Ages, the idea was, you know what, if I live a good life now, I will get a reward when I die. I might be a peasant, but if I work hard and live a good life, I can be, you know what, it's worth it when I die. Okay? As opposed to the Renaissance and this idea of this humanist idea of the Renaissance is no, no, no. Enjoy being alive now. Don't just live for the afterlife. Enjoy being human now. And again, remember, they survived this plague, right? Now it's like, we got to live it up, people, okay? In the Middle Ages, there was this thought that you should follow God blindly. Whatever he says to do, or whatever a priest or someone tells us he says to do, we've got to follow it, not question it. Don't question authority, don't question God. And in the Renaissance, again, with this humanist idea, the idea is, you know what? God gave us options and potential. God gave us free will. We can make our own choices, and that's okay. Big difference. Again, in the Middle Ages, too, they were more devout Catholics. If we're looking at Catholicism, and especially in Italy, most were Catholics there, and they were very devout. Renaissance, they were still pretty devout Catholics. They called themselves Catholics, but they were also secular, meaning they were concerned with the present moment. Okay? They weren't just saying, I've got to follow all these directions and do what I do and be loyal to God, and that's it, in the hopes that when I die, I'm going to have a good life. They're like, you know what? We believe in God, but we also believe in being concerned with our present time, not just focusing on the afterlife. Okay, that was a big deal, a big change in that. All right, so you got some notes for humanism, hopefully. Now we've got old Petrarch, and Petrarch is kind of the father of Renaissance humanism. Oh God, DeVos, what a lot of words on there. But you don't have to know what this is. I can read aloud to you. But he wrote in Latin and the vernacular. The vernacular is his native language, which is Italian. Before then, most things were written in Latin. Okay, so you can only read it if you studied Latin. Now he's saying, you know what, art and poetry is for everybody. I'm going to write it in Italian. So if you read Italian, if you aren't as educated and you didn't learn how to speak Latin, you could understand it in Italian. And he was this poet who wrote, look at him with his little hat and scarf on. He wrote sonnets, often about a mysterious woman named Laura. He wrote for self-expression, not for the church. Again, a big departure.
Huge.
Old Petrarch, he's writing love poems. They're not about the church. Hey, remember all that art I showed you from the Middle Ages? It was all pretty church related. Not anymore. And so here are some of his things about the mysterious Laura. I'd sing of love in such a novel fashion that from her cruel side I would draw by force 1,000 sighs a day, kindling again in her cold mind 1,000 high desires. Okay, he's just, all this I do because I do not mind my discontentment in this one short life, but glory rather in my later fame. So he's writing love poetry in Italian. Again, big deal. He's a humanist poet, okay?
Like experience is more important than authority at this time, right? If you
Mhm.
look.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we'll talk about patrons pretty soon, don't you worry. But we're also going to talk about art as well. So all these things kind of come up right now, okay? So Renaissance art reflected new ideas. Again, this new idea of humanism. We celebrate the here and now, we're alive. Let's look at life, right? Let's enjoy our life. So again, remember that first picture, the first painting that we have? Oh dear God, that was the one of the poor Mary. We don't even, she looks almost genderless. We don't know if she's man or woman. She doesn't look happy. She's really not snuggling baby old man Jesus that she's got there too. He looks like a little puppet in her hands versus this. Okay, Renaissance art is more realistic. And remember before I said that, I think it was St. Augustine who said, we got to be careful of idolatry. We don't want to idolize the human form. So the idea was, let's not make Mary look human. She's not human. In this way, they're saying, no, the individual should be celebrated. We're important, okay? And they use perspective. So I don't know if you can see from where you are, and I'll have these slides up, but you can tell there's no depth to this first painting. It just looks flat, right? Now they're studying and using things like perspective to make things look more three-dimensional. So this idea that the background really does look like it's far away there. The use of dark for the background, the use of light highlighting, you can see there's like highlights on the baby's arm there, where it makes him look like that's more rounded, these techniques to make him look more rounded and alive. Also, this is religious art, but the Renaissance celebrated other art too, and kind of reflected back on Greek and Roman subjects. So again, in this one, baby Jesus looks a lot more like a baby, right? Compare him to baby, I don't know, baby old man George over there. And he looks like a baby. He's holding his mother like a baby, right? There's something a little bit more realistic to that painting, I think. Can you see the difference between those two?
Colors definitely jump out at you.
Yep. And he just looks like a baby. Okay. So one thing that supports, so this fervent art movement, right? We've got artists now just producing this work, and how can they do this? They need to have money, right? Patrons supported the arts, okay? You could actually make money as an artist. There is a wealthy middle class. There are merchants, right? People who deal with shipping and business people. Wealthy families, even some church leaders would financially support artists. They would give them money because they wanted to help beautify Rome, okay? Sometimes they had their portraits painted, and that was a big deal. Like, I got enough money, I'm gonna have my portrait painted. And often in their portraits, I look at this one over here. I don't know if you can see these, that light's kind of bright. But oftentimes people would put on all their finest stuff, like 4 necklaces and every ring they had, kind of like a show off idea. But if you had your portrait painted, it meant you were something special, right? You'd hang it in your home. Some people would donate them to the city to put in public squares. And this way they can demonstrate their own importance too. So kind of, I think about sometimes how our hallways here, there's a donor's name on it. If we had a big fancy painting of them, that would be kind of the same thing. But this is like, I'm such a bigwig here. I'm a patron of the arts, right? And it was amazing. And again, you'll see these two as well. Even though you might maybe not want to wear a t-shirt on your head that looks like that guy has on, that was the style of the day, or her outfit, look at that ruff. But these are looking a little bit more realistic. There's a little more depth to them, this use of light and dark too. All these different techniques that are a far departure from art of the Middle Ages.
They're kind of like selfies.
Yeah. I'm not a middle-aged art fan though, too. Okay. So here you've got The Last Supper by Leonardo da Vinci, again, produced at this time. And I just want to show you some different things. But again, the idea of people looking realistic. In this, not everyone is looking out at the viewer, right? There's little side conversations going on as well. It's not more realistic in the fact that the table is kind of a mess. It's a little bit of a mess. You can see, if you actually see the real thing, you can see creases in the tablecloth, and all this is painted in a fresco. It's painted on plaster, on wet plaster. So it becomes part of the wall. Sadly, it's really hard to restore and keep going. But this is where you get Leonardo da Vinci's Last Supper. All right, this is another artist, Caravaggio. Yep. Yes, sorry, well, pardon me? A patron is someone who supports the arts. So that was a couple back over here. Right, a patron of the arts is someone who financially supports the arts. They buy art. They commission artists to take pictures of them, right? The church leaders, again, we talk about Michelangelo in the Sistine Chapel. The church leaders are like, we're paying him to do this. And this is going to take years to accomplish. So there are people financially investing in artists. That's how artists could make a living at that time. Okay, so here we got Caravaggio, and one of my favorites of this time as well too. This is a painting called Judith Beheading Holofernes, and it was made between 1598 and 1599. Okay, this is an Old Testament scene. It features the widow Judith. There's Judith, and she's decapitating the Syrian general. Now, I don't particularly love this painting, but I'm just trying to find some that were done. And this masterpiece is in the Galleria Nazionale d'Arte Antica collection in Rome. But again, think back at that Flat Mary, right? Remember that other one, that flat picture, the people going into the boat? It was like, seemed kind of strange. This looks very lifelike. Again, if you wanted to come closer, you could. But Caravaggio was a master of light and using light and dark. So you would often see this darkness and then a source of light drawing you in. Right? Not necessarily pretty pictures either. a beheading. I don't think so. Okay, and so I'm just going to show you some art. Okay, so here we've got The Birth of Venus by Botticelli, another famous Renaissance painter. Botticelli often had, oh no, that's Titian had the redheads, but this is The Birth of Venus. Did you have a question there, Gray?
So like the most expensive painting ever, like just sold like 2 years ago, just by Leonardo, and he was like of Jesus.
I have no, I know Van Gogh's Sunflowers were for a while one of the most expensive ones, but that was the most expensive one.
Well, was it Renaissance?
Yes. So you said it was by Leonardo da Vinci? Who did you say was the artist? Yeah, Leonardo da Vinci. So all of these are famous Renaissance artists. So you had Caravaggio, Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci. This is Botticelli. Okay. And this is The Birth of Venus. This was probably made in the mid 1480s. And again, the goddess Venus arriving at the shore after her birth. Okay. This is in the Uffizi Gallery in Florence, just so you know. But this is definitely influenced by classical Roman and ancient Greek art. You've got a mythological figure here too. But again, they're kind of going back to the classical age and trying to do it one step above.
If any of you ever go to Italy, make sure you go to their museum.
Oh my gosh,
They have
yeah.
Some of the most beautiful art. in
And
the
go to
world.
Florence too. It's amazing. So here's one of my personal faves is Leonardo da Vinci, because this guy did everything. All right. He was an artist. He was an inventor. He was a scientist. He was a botanist. He was an engineer. He was an architect. He was a cartographer, meaning a map maker, a mathematician. And yeah, in his spare time, he also made music. Okay. He was just a really good example of a Renaissance thinker, person. He was curious about the world around him, right? And he wanted to know how things worked. He'd take them apart. He had huge amounts of notebooks. You can find many books that consist of pages from his notebooks that are crazy. He would go to the morgue. He wanted to study anatomy because he wanted his paintings to be really lifelike. So he'd go to the morgue and sketch bodies, how the muscles were structured, how veins and organs and skeletons were put together. So then he could develop that in his artwork for his bodies. And there's going to be more for Leonardo as I go on, okay? All right, so here are some of his anatomy sketches just by going to the morgue. And this understanding of the human body made his artwork more lifelike, but it also added stuff to medicine. So here you've got a uterus with a baby inside of it. Here's the heart. And he took copious notes, and he often wrote his notes backwards. I don't know if any of you saw the Da Vinci Code, but
Why did he make them backwards?
that was just a little thing he would do for his note taking.
I'm playing with the idea of mirrors.
Mm-hmm. Okay, also inventor, right? Here, these are sketches he did. Here's a precursor to the airplane, all right? Or maybe a helicopter. In his sketches, you can find designs for a parachute, a bicycle, a tennis racket, a crossbow, a cannon, a machine gun, a tank, and a diving suit. He has these sketches and ideas for all of these things. I don't know. I think I kind of have a crush on Leonardo da Vinci.
What a groundbreaker.
Seriously. So, and again, here you've got Mona Lisa, one of his most famous paintings, right? It's so funny if you ever were to go to the Louvre Museum in Paris, the Mona Lisa is not that big. It's really pretty small. It's behind all this glass, hard to see. And this is another one of his Virgin and Child. So again, another one of Mary and baby Jesus, and a little bit more, and with Saint Anne, a little more lifelike, right? A little more looking like people, like an actual young woman with her baby. All right, Vitruvian Man. Have any of you seen this anywhere? Famous. Okay, so this idea, and again, he's mathematic too. And this idea of the golden ratio. So he were to say, if you had a man flat on the ground with his arms outstretched and his legs, I think, forming a certain type of triangle, and you put, like his navel was the middle, everything should be a quarter of the height. So if I were to measure you with some yarn, your length of your outstretched arms should equal your height. And according to his calculations, from your foot to right below your knee, so your foot here, right below your knee should be a quarter of your height, and the length of your foot should be about 1/6 of your height. But again, it's this study of the body. It's very, very, I think it's very fascinating. And yeah, I know he's naked. Okay, so do. So Michelangelo and Raphael, do I have these things on here? Do I go back there? I might have had, this might be a, let's see. Michelangelo, put Sistine Chapel. I did make a shorter one for you all, so I might not have had. That's Botticelli. So Michelangelo, we've got the Sistine Chapel. So you can put that on there. Sorry, if I, yes, great.
Who painted the girl with pearl earring?
Van Meer.
Van Beer?
So he's a Dutch artist. So,
Way to pull that one out.
hmm?
Way to pull that out. Should we answer that?
Oh, well. Okay, so Raphael, I don't think I have much about Raphael here right now. And I'm trying to figure out did I lose something here? We're going to skip. We're going to skip. So cross off Raphael, another painter at this time. We're going to skip ideal men and women. We're going to go back to ideal men and women. Okay, so just hold that thought. Yes, Gray.
That's one thing I can write down for Vitruvian Man.
Vitruvian Man is that study of the ratio of man's body
Oh,
parts.
yeah.
Okay, how about that? All right, we are skipping Raphael. I don't know where I'm missing things here. Okay, we're gonna skip over ideal men and ideal women because we're looking at the Renaissance in Northern Europe. We will go back to fill those other things out. Okay, are we all with me?
Is that one picture of the mother, Mary Mother, is that Raphael?
I know, but I think I had a slide for them.
Oh, okay.
But this one over here, this one is,
That thing?
it could be
Not that one. The one that we were talking about, the bright color.
this one. I don't,
I'm wondering if that's Raphael up there.
that, I actually think this is a Michelangelo one.
Okay,
I'm not sure,
all right.
quite honestly. I think I might have just, who knows what I was doing at the time. This is an oldie. And, what? Yep. No, we're not skipping Michelangelo too, because you're going to see that Michelangelo painted the Sistine Chapel, among other things. I think I had a more detailed one about art or something.
Oh, okay, you might have taken
I don't know. The Sistine Chapel on his back in the Vatican. How about that? Okay, so then remember it happened in Italy first, right? They got over the bubonic plague first. They're also surrounded by water. And they have that history. They have that history of classic Rome and Greece still part of their heritage, right? But eventually, starting in the 1500s, the Renaissance goes to Northern Europe. Why a little bit later? Because they're still getting over the plague, right? They got the plague later. Recovering it from her later. And this is often called the Elizabethan age, right? In England, after who? Queen Elizabeth, right? She spoke French, Italian, Latin, and Greek. She wrote poetry and music and supported the development of English art and literature when she was queen. So when you think of her like, at the time, like what a Renaissance woman, right? Kind of like Leonardo da Vinci, like just did all these things. And a lot of art oriented, right? And just, and because of her love of the art scene in England flourished. I don't think William Shakespeare would be as successful, as well read, if she wasn't supporting him and having his plays show in court and going to see his plays, okay? So she was what we would call a Renaissance woman. And in this time now, remember Petrarch, who was writing his love poetry to the mysterious Laura? Yes?
What's her name?
Queen Elizabeth.
Oh, yeah.
Now everyone's writing in the vernacular, everyday language. Okay, this is a big deal. Again, it's more accessible for everyone to read and partake in. So if Shakespeare is doing his plays and it's written in English, not in Latin, everybody can go and enjoy them, not just the people that studied Latin. Okay, it's a big deal. And now reading and writing is more available to more people. So more people get to have part of that fun, Okay? Yes, Gray. We're not there yet. Okay, so we're just going to find writing in the vernacular. We said a little bit about that too. Bruegel. We'll get to Bruegel. Sorry, I don't know why this is not in order. We're going to do William Shakespeare first, though, okay? William Shakespeare, more than 1,700 words, they say, appeared for the first time in his works. The word bedroom, no one saw it or heard of it before until William Shakespeare put it in a play, right? Lonely, generous, gloomy, heartsick, hurry, and sneak. Those are just a few of the words that first came to view in a William Shakespeare play. Isn't that crazy to think of that? He was the most famous playwright at that time, and he started writing plays at 28. And again, he writes in the vernacular. This idea of writing in the vernacular is in everyday language. So you can throw that with writing in vernacular too, okay? Everyday language. People don't have to know Latin or how to read and write Latin to understand these works. That's a big deal because remember, only the really, really wealthy could understand Latin, could read and write Latin, right? Or understand it. We're speaking Italian in Italy, so now they can go to a play and it's in Italian, more people can understand. All right, and he's writing about universal themes in everyday settings, right? Crisscross, like star-crossed lovers and jealousy and things like that. And he's written it all, comedies, historical plays, tragedies. Sometimes his comedies are funny. Sometimes his comedies just are comedies because not everyone dies at the end. Tragedy, usually the play has a lot of dead bodies. Yes.
Yeah, my middle school teacher described him in this way. You go two kinds of things, comedies and tragedies. Comedies, everybody gets married at the end, and tragedies, everybody gets killed at the end.
And there might be a little bit of death in a comedy too, but you're right. You're right. And he also wrote historical plays like Richard III. He wrote about a lot of different, Julius Caesar, exactly. Et tu, Brute. Okay. So now we're going to see some Bruegel. So here you have a Northern European painter, Renaissance painter. And this is Bruegel, right? This is called The Peasant Wedding. This is a big deal again too. He's painting everyday people doing everyday things. Remember in the Middle Ages and before that, it'd be like people, all religious work, serious religious kind of highbrow work. It's like, I am celebrating. This is a famous artist celebrating and taking the time to depict peasants, right? Unheard of at that time, right? He was not painting the rich and the famous or any religious artwork. And again, you've got that looking again more, that same theme of people looking more realistic, looking more rounded. And again, not that formal, like here I am sitting in front of a portrait, but this is an action shot. Not everybody, you're getting a lot of people's backs too, but the detail is amazing. Okay, so for Bruegel, you want to put that he painted everyday people doing everyday things. He wasn't just painting rich or famous or religious stuff. Okay. Big time. I get kind of geeked out about Johannes Gutenberg, but Gutenberg, as a reader, I'm a fervent reader. Thank you, Gutenberg, because you invented the printing press. So in 1440, Johann Gutenberg is from Germany, and he invented the printing press. And here's kind of a rough depiction of it. And because of this, a printer could produce hundreds of copies of a single work. Books are cheap enough to everyone could buy them, okay? Renaissance literature can reach a larger audience. Before that, my goodness, it was you'd have some monk somewhere transferring it by hand. It would take God knows how long, handwritten copy, and it would be very, very expensive. Now you can produce so much more quickly, mass production, and cheaply. So then people like me could buy a book. Yes? You mean the different books of the Bible? Yeah, Mr. Moss, how is the Bible put together? He's saying the different books, how is like not printer press wise, but how, I mean, I think they found some of the Dead Sea Scrolls somewhere.
Well, that's probably not an easy thing to answer.
The Bible is actually not a book. It's a library of 73 different books.
Okay.
So they were assembled in the 300s.
So those 73 different books, and how do they find all those, Gray?
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Well, the Jewish scriptures were actually assembled around 90.
And so that's the Torah?
That's the Old Testament.
Okay,
That was assembled by the Jews in about 90. And they would have had it on scrolls
mm-hmm,
all over. So they would have had, even though the scriptures were written from like 1000.
they still have those and carry around with them.
They had them with them. And then the New Testament was all written between Jesus' death and the year 110.
Got that one?
And then the church put those books together in the New Testament.
So there you go. Okay, so now printing was not invented for the first time in 1440, right? Block printing was invented in China well before that, okay? But the process of block printing was too slow to satisfy this thirst. The Renaissance had this thirst, this high demand for knowledge and information in books. To me, I get the chilly willies. I get nerdy out on this stuff. So I'm like, I love art, I love reading, I love music. So like, yay, everybody gets to play this. So again, Johann Gutenberg, this allowed for mass production. Much cheaper books, more affordable for people. More people are reading the Bible now, okay? And more religious reformers are popping up too because of that. And I don't know if we talked about this yet, but Martin Luther, right? And the 95 Theses that he then posted on the wall, the door of the church. He was not able to get Protestant religion off the ground without being able to mass produce the 95 Theses and post those everywhere. All right, so you've got Johann Gutenberg in the printing press. Oh, heck. All right, scientific revolution was going on at this time too. The scientific method, research. We need proof, we need evidence, we need experiments, hypothesis. All right, at this time, Copernicus introduced the idea of a sun-centered model of the universe. What? God isn't the center of the universe? This was controversial talk at the time. Medicine was making great strides at this time too. Microscopes, this idea of studying anatomy. People were producing ointments to prevent infection, creating artificial limbs, believe it or not. Chemistry was being studied. It used to be called alchemy. And Sir Isaac Newton was around this time too, introducing the idea of gravity and calculus. I'm going to kind of roar through this sort of quickly. So if you don't have the stuff with, have a little something down there because I want to get these gender roles. And I know we normally clean up at this time. I need you to stay with me. You'll have plenty of time to clean up it before you go to your other part, okay? All right, I'm going to move on. Okay, I'm going to move on. All right, gender roles in the Renaissance. Another thing I love to talk about too. Men had to excel in many fields. Men should be, yes, Gray. This is on the part that says ideal men, ideal women. So go back up there. Hey, everybody, go back up to ideal men and ideal women. I'm sorry, I'm kind of racing against the clock here. I got a little time taken away. Men had to excel in many fields. They had to be charming and witty and well educated in the classics. Okay, they should also be able to sing and dance and play music and write poetry. In addition, being a skilled horse rider, a wrestler, and a swordsman. Think of Romeo. Even though his character lived in the Middle Ages, William Shakespeare is writing this in the Renaissance. Romeo, when we see the movie, is a Renaissance man. He knows how to read, he knows how to write. He knows swordplay, right? He's able to kill Tybalt. He speaks to Juliet in beautiful poetry. When we see the movie, he's going to be doing some sculpture. You're educated to do it all and do it all well. And that was considered manly too, to be able to sing and dance and play music, okay? And to be well educated. Women at this time now should know the classics, right? And be charming, but don't try to seek fame. They can inspire art, but not create it. They were a little bit better educated than they were in the Middle Ages, but had little to no influence in politics. They could be a patron of the arts. And again, those two choices for women, either get married or become a nun. Okay? They needed a dowry to do this. Since well-born women didn't work, the dowry, this money, this sack of money that the woman's parents would pay the man, the groom, offset the cost of keeping a wife and family. The husband would then use that money his bride's family gave him to invest in property or business. But if he died, that money was returned to the woman. Okay? Many, because the dowry was so expensive, if you had a lot of daughters, you would probably only save the dowry for one daughter, and the rest of your daughters would have to go join the convent. You wouldn't have enough money. Okay? And even as a nun, you had to bring a little bit of dowry. Married life, most men married in their 30s, most women married in their mid to late teens. So that Juliet marrying Paris was not unusual. Women of the upper class were not expected or even allowed to work outside the home. Even breastfeeding was considered a job for lower class women, and babies were sent out to wet nurses. So you got a little, that was really quick. And I'm sorry I have to roar through that. If,
Because I stole that from you.
well, you kind of did, but that's all right. Anyway, I just want you to understand that things were just blossoming and growing and fermenting in the Renaissance. So much stuff was happening and this rebirth, and people were celebrating being alive, and they brought such great gifts to the rest of the world. I will post these slides up, and I'll post my recording up too. Question, Mr. Larson? Okay, why don't you do your best to clean up? There's paper towels and spray over on this side. You can do that.
Also, look at who's on the Google, when you go to Google today, look who's highlighted. You will recognize that writer, I hope.
Oh,
The
yeah.
one and only Nicola Shaw.
Oh, are we doing that again?
No, but I want you to see this, he's famous.